Tales from the Tap. My name is Frankie, and this is my co-host.
Dan the man.
We are excited to talk to you about Standard going into the RCQ season. But before we do, Dan, what did you do for the new year?
New Year's, absolutely nothing. Winter has been sick, so literally we went to sleep, got invited to a couple things, but I was like, if you're not going, I'm not going, and we just like slept, which was really nice. But Christmas was really good. It was my favorite Christmas ever. I know we talked about what our plans were going to be, and mine ended up being everything worked out perfectly. Got to see a lot of family, went to my aunt's house. We hosted stuff on Christmas Day. Winter bombed, like nailed it with the food. It was all so good. She made me green bean casserole that I really wanted. So thank you for that. But yeah, we had a ton of family over. And then also, I don't know if you watch football, but I watch a ton of football, and the Ravens, which have been my favorite team since I was a kid, they are dominating. They're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm already planning my Super Bowl party. I'm so excited. I mean, they just like back-to-back weeks on Christmas Day, my miracle. And then yesterday, just back-to-back, they just destroyed two of the greatest teams in the league besides themselves. So I'm super excited.
Oh, man. Well, I hope that goes well. Usually when stuff like that happens and you're like so hyped for it, someone has to throw on that day.
I know. That's what I've been waiting for.
I'm like, ooh, don't say that because,
Yeah. Well, I know. I was worried both games. I was like, man, we're going to throw it away for sure somehow, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Either way, Super Bowl party is going to happen because I like to eat.
That's good. We kind of had the same thing that we do every year where we're watching the show for New Year's in LA, New York, Chicago.
Yeah.
And
I saw your Facebook post about that where you're
oh
like,
my gosh,
why does Chicago have like the Michael Jackson impersonator and everybody else gets like, who do they have?
So LA had Green Day.
Yeah, Green Day, which is awesome.
And then New York had LL Cool J.
That's awesome.
And then
too.
we had a Michael Jackson impersonator, like the best that Chicago can offer. And
it just gave us the hologram.
No, I'm not kidding. It hurts me so bad that like our halftime, now you got me on football. No, but our New Year's show is easily the worst on television, and it's like not even close. We have like local newscasters, and they're panning over to Indiana doing like the pierogi drop while that one dude is doing like 7 shots every time someone says the word baby. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is no wonder why no one wants to come to the Midwest, because this is the cringiest thing I've ever seen.
That's so funny. I was going to say, like, didn't New York have like the ninja one though, where he's like trying to get everybody to do like the flossing dance?
Oh,
I don't remember when that was.
No, I don't remember that. But like, I don't know. You're seeing like there's Green Day. They're panning over to Ludacris. Like even Puerto Rico, like we're seeing their New Year's, and I was like, man, ours is just absolutely terrible.
Yeah, they should have got Kanye.
Oh, okay, wait. I have a very funny story about that. I promise I'll be super quick.
Okay, go.
So my cousin's fiance does like video recordings for different artists.
Oh, okay.
And so he got called last minute, like, hey, we need you in Vegas tomorrow to do a show. It ends up being Kanye's show.
Oh.
And like $2,000 a ticket in a warehouse. He shows up like 2 hours late. And I did not know this was a thing, but it was like listening to an album, like his secret album, but he wasn't like performing.
It was just like already made it.
Yeah, he like plugged in his phone.
I've heard of stuff like that actually.
And he's just dancing on stage. And they didn't get the right permits, so the police busted it. And on top of that, he had to do the show in sand. And so they brought 2 truckloads of sand to dump onto the stage.
Okay.
Like, everything about this, I was like, this is the wildest thing I've ever.
It's such a cool story though to like have, you're at a bar, you're trying to talk to somebody, you're like, oh, pocket story,
Yeah,
like,
right.
That's a clutch one.
And I've got it actually, there's weirder stuff, but we'll have to talk about that off camera.
All right, for sure. Sounds good. I'm also kind of jealous too, because you said you watched the Korean New Year's and they had new jeans. I'm like, if I would have known, I would have put it on. I fell asleep before midnight.
Yeah.
Winter was like, it's 12. I'm like,
New Year's.
We
Kiss
did
goodnight.
it. Yeah, exactly. Congrats.
Thank you. Another time.
Yeah, I'm like, well, you're sick, so I'm not going to kiss you right now.
All right. Also, before we get into the episode, one other thing I want to ask. What for Magic was like a highlight for you of 2023?
Oh, that's a good one. I actually saw your question in the script. I'm like, I want to do this fresh, like not have thought about it, and now I'm kind of regretting. 2023 favorite thing? I would say probably this actually. Doing the podcast, getting back into Magic, getting really, really deep into it. Has kind of like I've been saying before, reinvigorated my love of the game, wanting to play test, wanting to make good content for you guys. It's been something I've always wanted to do. I used to stream back in like 2018, 2019 to a pretty decent viewer count, but I never really did anything with it. And then once we opened the store, I was working too much to actually put in the hours for it. But I just enjoy this. I've been having so much fun with this specifically. We were talking about this a bunch with the people that just left who were playing Standard for our weekly event, asking them their takes because we're about to talk about Standard already. And just having such a good time, meeting new people as a result, going back to competitive tournaments that I was just like, I don't want to go. And now people are like, they don't have to drag me to go. I actually actively want to go. Like MagicCon is kind of awesome. MagicCons are really cool, and I really want to go. You know,
I'm so excited.
So that was pretty much my favorite thing for 2023 Magic wise. Otherwise, I think that the sets this year were a lot better than probably the past couple of years. I would say in the last 3 years, Wilds of Eldraine, Caverns of Ixalan, and even March of the Machine. Aftermath kind of flopped, but like there's a lot of cool cards in it. Those 3 sets gave me a lot of stuff to be excited for, and Standard has kind of like not been as fun as it is now in a long time.
Yeah, I like through playtesting a lot of Standard have felt like Standard is way more powerful than when I was playing Standard, like back in Ravnica, Theros, like original Theros. And so it's a lot of fun, but it's harder than I expected. They're like the interactions, the lines of margin of like your mistakes. I feel like it's closer to Modern than it is to Pioneer. And it's like, oh, if you make this mistake, like the game is like over. And so, but we'll get into that later.
No, for sure. I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's definitely fun. For me, I've kind of got like 3 big highlights that I have thought about. One being Raid Boss down, Karn out of Pioneer. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Glad he's out of here. Been asking for that for a very, very long time.
I know you hate my boy.
And I love him for Modern, but not Pioneer. He can go. No more Green Machine, thankfully. And it was still making an appearance at the RC. So as we said, it's
actually, I think I have one of our patrons, Mike, on camera for MTG Chicago playing Spike Mono Green no Karn list, and it was actually pretty good.
Oh, I lost to him last week on it in the finals with an Ulamog. Like Ulamog hit me with an Ulamog, and I was like, oh,
what?
Yeah, not expected in Pioneer.
Right.
The second thing would also probably be this podcast. I've always wanted to do something like business related, but in a creative realm. And I love Magic and wanted to content create. And I like had a couple sputters of like wanting to do it for League and then wanting to do it for some Magic and never really had something consistent. And look at us, episode 20 right here.
Oh yeah, 20.
Yeah,
I forgot about
20
that.
episode right now. So I've also really enjoyed doing this too and excited to continue in 2024. And lastly, the limited sets have just absolutely been bangers. A goal for myself for this year was to get Mythic and Limited, and with Wilds of Eldraine, which I really enjoyed that set, ended up getting there. And so
the past couple of years, Limited has been just absolutely phenomenal. Shout outs to the design team. They are crushing it over there. And yeah, like Wilds of Eldraine, Caverns of Ixalan, I know people aren't super high on it online, from what I've seen on Twitter at least. But Caverns of Ixalan, I've had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I think it's a fun set. It's definitely not, to me, it's lower in the tier of this year.
Yeah, like, it's no New Capenna, but it's like Wilds of Eldraine was really good.
Yeah, it's not New Capenna, but I do think that, Wilds of Eldraine was great. 1 was great. March was great.
Yeah, 1 was awesome.
I really
miss Forcing Soldiers.
Yeah, so there were a lot of really great sets. I don't think this one was as terrible as what like everyone online has been saying, but it's definitely overall like the limited sets were really great this year and really fun to play. And I felt I've been a better Magic player just because of the prep that we've done for the podcast and releasing episodes for pre-release.
Yeah.
And I'm getting better at like card evaluation, which I think is hard, to like evaluate cards without the like on the fly. And
100%.
that's a thing that this has helped out.
That's probably why LCI has been so unpopular with people online, is because one, card evaluation is hard already, but two, it was one of the hardest limited sets probably of all time. And with that being said, people are going to struggle with a hard limited set. I personally have been struggling with the set where I'll just like draft. I'm like, well, I know I'm not going to outdraft the diamond mythic players, so I'm just going to do whatever I want and see if it works. And I mostly draft on Arena just to get standard cards currently, and I'm way behind. Like Eldraine, I just played so much. I actually almost did get mythic, but LCI, I think I ended up with like whatever the season just ended. I was in like gold or platinum, and then it's like, well, back to bronze or silver or whatever. So like didn't get a chance to really grind it out, but it's a hard format, so that's probably why a lot of people aren't into it. And it's like saying like the card evaluation is really hard there, so it doesn't the Wilds of Eldraine decks kind of just like slotted themselves in, where LCI is like you need to be drafting like actually kind of perfectly if you want to consistently get those 7-win leagues or whatever. But the limited formats being exciting brings me to your next point, which we're going to bring up. What are we excited for in Magic 2024? I think one of the things I'm most excited about is the removal of the set draft distinction. We talked about it in one of our previous episodes. If you want the link, we'll send it to you guys. But we talked about how Magic is shifting to the play booster, and I cannot like emphasize enough how excited I am for this as a store owner, as a player, as somebody who really enjoys these new limited sets. It's going to be so much better for the game. I'm just calling it now. You're going to love it. Invest. No more draft boosters, no more distinction, no more ifs, ands, or buts, no more, oh, the price payout is draft packs. This sucks. It's all play boosters. Your pre-release kits are play boosters. Your boxes are play boosters. Still going to have the up to 4 rares chance. Smaller packs, less of those common garbage cards that you get at the end of the pack when you're just like, oh, I would have rather gotten the full art land than like, I don't know, 1 mana, whatever, garbage card from LCI.
You don't want that poison dart frog with his little gun?
Poison dart frog is good. Do not, that's my greatest soldier.
You just said a 1/1 from LCI, and that was like the first one that popped into my head. He's not mana card. Yeah, he's not garbage. But that you just said 1/1, and there's been so many memes about him that it came to mind.
One of our friends posted him like dart frog with a gun. But no, like I can't even think of them because I just throw them away in my brain when I draft them. But there's so many cards that even in LCI or Wilds of Eldraine, they're like high power sets, right? And you just like see this common, and you're just like, I'm never gonna play this. Goodbye. Even in best of 3 where you sideboard, you're like, nope, absolutely not. So those kind of cards are gonna start disappearing. So I'm really excited personally for play boosters.
I'll also throw a last minute mystery question at you. Do you have like a goal within Magic for
2020? Since we're going to be playing more competitive tournaments, I think I'd like to qualify for the RC, even if I can't go, just to be able to say I qualified. And then I'd like to day 2 at the standard 75K for the Magic Con in February. Those are like my immediate goals.
Yeah.
I want to go to some standard RCQs, top 8, maybe win one, at least get the pin. I want to get the pin every season because that's really fun. It took me to 1. I got the pin first try. I was like, wait, these are awesome. And then I saw people not get the pins at some stores. I was like, I'm only going to stores with pins. But yeah, for sure. Top 2 goals. Day 2 at MagicCon. If I can day 2, I'll be happy. Obviously, I want to do better, but day 2, I'll be happy with my performance because I'm still kind of like unretiring. Besides the Thunder Reach event we went to, I haven't gone to any really, really big tournaments in a while. Part of it's because I'm always stuck here on Saturdays, but it is what it is. The other thing is, RCQ, top 8 every quarter for whatever format, qualify for the RC. And if I want to go, maybe I'll think about going.
Yeah. And that goal is mine for 2024. I have like done the statistics over the past, not this summer, the previous summer. I hit top 8, about 50% of the RCQs,
Nice.
except for the modern season. I only got one of the 3 modern ones that I went to, and one seal that I did not make for. But besides that, I finally want to get to the RC
Yeah.
and or top 8 a big tournament, whether that be a 10K, 5K.
Yeah, like a Nerd Rage.
Yeah, like a Nerd Rage.
Yeah,
Or-
I would like to try to do more of the Nerd Rage events now that it's like the new year. If it's possible, I'd love to like be able to just go to most of them to see if I could qualify for their end of the year like 24 player gauntlet. That
Yeah.
was one of my goals before I opened the store, and then once the store was opened, I was like, well, I'm basically retired.
Yeah. Well, and too, especially for you, like what's good is that like at least the energy ones that are close enough to drive to, they have Sunday events.
Yeah,
So like
that's
even if you
true.
can't do the Saturday ones, it's like you probably can always hit a Sunday.
Right.
Pioneer, Modern, whatever the case.
I do hope that if any of you guys from Nerders are listening, Mundelein is okay, but like Rosemont, Arlington Heights, even Schaumburg, there's got to be some convention centers that are closer and like better areas. I just feel like Mundelein is kind of a drive, unless it works out. Like I don't know what their analytics look like, but if it's like Mundelein is the sweet spot, we get guys driving out for that. I feel like, dude, let's go to Rosemont, get one of those convention centers, and like really pop off.
If anything, I think they choose Mundelein because it's way cheaper.
I have a feeling that's what it is.
Because Rosemont is like expensive.
But even White Shores had their Rosemont tournament, and White Shores isn't. Yeah. Nerd Rage isn't exactly like Watsy, they're not rolling in it. So
right.
Go support them. Go play in a Nerd Rage event. Even if you're not from the area, they're worth coming out for. They usually combo with some kind of like hotel where you can get like a hotel deal cheaper as a result of playing in the Magic tournament. So definitely worth coming out for, even if you're not from the Midwest. They are as fun or more fun than what Star City Opens used to be.
Yeah. And what I'm excited for is just the events that we're going to. Like, I'm so amped for MTG Chicago. I'm so amped to see other content creators that I really like. I'm excited for us to play in this event. I'm excited for our testing team that we're getting together to prep for it.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to kind of hopefully like schedule my year a little better and kind of like take some of the theater gigs that I do like sporadically and randomly. And this year I've kind of like front loaded what I have to where I'm like directing in these first 3 months.
Yeah.
But then because like I've been going nonstop since July, I'm hoping that, or the plan is anyway, that I'm not going to take on anything else after May.
Yeah.
So that like I have just the rest of the year to like be with my family and Magic. So very excited to, try and plan a little better.
With that being said, we'll get into some quick housekeeping. Like Frank was saying though, MagicCon, we want to meet other content creators, and as a result of us recently being on Twitter a lot and our giveaway, we've actually gotten to connect with a lot more people. It's been really fun. So if you haven't already and you would like to get in on the giveaway, which I'm sure most of you have already seen it, but for those who haven't, we have a Twitter giveaway live right now as of the release of this episode, because we're recording this a couple days early, obviously. It's on the 6th. You should have like 2-3 days maybe if we got the episode out on time to still do the like, comment, retweet, or whatever for Twitter to get a box of LCI. So we are still doing that giveaway, and that giveaway actually boosted our follower count on Twitter quite a bit. So if you haven't already joined in, you can get a chance to win the box. I think you have a chance at right now. I think the odds right now are about 1 in 800. So we had a pretty big jump. But thank you for everybody who did check out our post, and for those who are listening as a result, welcome. And we hope to see you again in the future. And then as in follow up on the housekeeping, the best way you guys can support us if you want to help us keep the lights on is through Patreon. Obviously, our show will always remain free. We want to keep it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast, and on video for the YouTube watchers going forward. The show will always be free. But if you can support us on Patreon, we do have some pretty cool perks. We, like Frank was talking about, have our playtesting group getting set up in the Discord right now for the standard. We have coaching sessions we'll give you at the highest tier where we'll just get on call with you. And as we start to move into streaming, which if you want to give us a follow on Twitch as well, we can even do some live streaming with the coaching, and you can keep your session forever if you want to download the VOD, or if we get it posted onto YouTube, if we make a VOD channel, etc. So yeah, if you can support us through Patreon, you want to give us a follow on Twitch, and or even just a YouTube subscription, that'd be really appreciated. Our YouTube channel is starting to grow finally, and now that we have quite a bit of content on it, we're happy to be filling it. When we only had like a few episodes, it wasn't really worth us blasting it. Now you can actually see our full catalog with better audio, and we're looking into getting a better mic camera, as it only records in 30 frames per second at the moment. So my hand might even look a little weird, but I promise it's supposed to be 1080p. And then yeah, if you haven't already, Twitter giveaway and Twitter Discord, all of that stuff is free. And if you ever want to support us, please support us. With that being said, you ready to jump into some standard?
Let's jump into it.
All right, so RCQ season's coming up. Like Frank talked about, you should start seeing the RCQs popping up in your area. They might not all be standard, as people are allowed to do sealed, but I think a lot of it's going to be standard. I think standard is actually really popular. You go online, the discourse is usually pretty negative about standard. I haven't seen that at all. A lot of people online are loving standard. If you have a place to play, I know some places you just can't find enough people, or if you're from a small area. But Arena gives you pretty good play testing, even if you can't find somewhere to play F&M that has standard. But just go to your local game stores, ask them about it. If enough people ask, that's just going to be what motivates the store owners to start changing. I know I personally wanted to get into standard, so it helped, but I had just a few guys asking me about it, and I was like, done, let's get it. Let's whatever day works. And now we have Mondays going every week with standard. So
Well, and on top of that, they announced that store championship after
that's true.
from now on.
Yes.
So a lot of stores are also transitioning that way, and that helps
Yeah.
stores having standard for the first season is because they already have.
Yeah, I definitely am excited about that, because with standard store championships, it's a store championship for that format. That is the format you should be playing for the store championship. I mean, back in the day, we would even get a playmat. Watsy, give us back the playmats. Please give me a PDF. I'll buy it myself from Inked Gaming. I don't care. Sell it to me, man. I just give me the store championship playmat back, please. Like, that's just how it should be. But at least they're playing the correct format. It was kind of annoying playing sealed.
Speaking of Inked Gaming playmats, we are very close to releasing our playmat.
True.
We are going to have a Tales from the Tap playmat. We had some requests for it, and we are happy to invest and fulfill that for you. So if that's something that you're going to be looking for, I'm not entirely certain how we're going to work it out, but I'm mostly confident that it's going to be through Borsat Gaming, which we already tell you to support anyway.
Yeah, we'll definitely figure it out and then get that to you guys once we have the artwork finished. Our artist is currently still working hard on it, so we want to make sure she has all the time she needs to finish it. But yeah, we want to get those ready for MagicCon as well. And then if you have any, if you want to support our merch store, you can always check out some Tales from Tap merch and wear that at MagicCon with us as well. We're going to definitely go with a bunch of our friends from over here, and we want to just go with a crowd and have a lot of fun. Even if we scrub out, we get to still have some fun with our friends. But if we win, you know what I mean? But yeah, so
getting into some of the decks.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things that I wanted to address first is what the metagame is looking at right now. And
Right.
as I see it, there are 5 decks that are at the top tier and are very, very prevalent. You will see these decks. It's like a for certain thing. And then there are some other decks that you can expect to see. We probably won't dive into them as much, but we will just talk about some of the key cards in these decks, kind of the strategy and what they're trying to do. And part of us breaking all of this down is we're big proponents of play decks, right? We try and play what's good for these tournaments, but it's not just important to play what's good, but also within that, what is your style of
Right.
play? And what do you like playing? Because if the deck is just miserable, you will kind of go on autopilot and make some mistakes and then not have fun playing a deck you already don't like.
Right.
So,
I mean, we all have different play styles, and we're all going to like or dislike certain cards to our play style that may or may not be correct or incorrect. It's all just what you think the meta is going to look like and what you're comfortable playing. There are options within what is the meta for you to like pick something you're comfortable with. But at the end of the day, we're still gonna have disagreements. Like Frank and I, or Todd, or whomever, we're like, I think this card looks good. I think this card looks bad. Here's why. Here's why not. I think this deck looks bad. I think this deck looks good. Here's why or why not. You got to have these discussions. You got to really hammer them out, and then you got to pick what works for you. But if you're finding yourself struggling, don't be afraid to pivot, like jump into something that you think is better for you. If you are playing a deck just because it's the best deck and you don't know how to play it, it's not going to work. Like you can play Domain, but if you're not playing it optimally, you're going to just get crushed by the other Domain players or people that are ready to play against Domain with the deck that they chose to play against that for a reason, So it's not just about like what Frank was saying, just, oh, this deck's top 3, it's got to be good. Yeah, I'm sure it is. But like at the same time, if you're not practicing and you're not understanding, it's pointless.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I had mentioned, especially with all of these decks and the decks in the format, is that Standard feels pretty fast. Like it feels like games are decided very quickly, and if you stumble, your opponent is going to punish you for it. And it's kind of like these cards are powerful.
Yeah,
and
it's fast, but also grindy. Like what Frank means is you're losing quickly if you make mistakes, and should you be playing optimally, your games can go to like 12, 13 turns, even with the aggro decks where you're like finding your card advantage. I had a game against a buddy recently where he wanted me to play test Azorius Soldiers against his control deck, and he was still trying to ban control list that has kind of been pushed out. But I was just having turns where I was like not casting my guys because I had a couple guys in play or a recruitment officer with plenty of mana to just activate his ability. Go, attack, go, get him really low, start drawing cards with the recruitment officer, have my hand full to Shauna's Tidebinder, whatever. Okay, he wipes my field. On your end step, Resolute, I forgot the name, Resolute. Reinforcements. And then all of a sudden, Knight Errant of Eos is getting me a ton of card advantage. And now I have these 4/4s and a bunch of 1/1s. You can't block everything. Your Wandering Emperor doesn't look that good. So that was like a 13, 14 turn win for me, but I was playing the aggro deck because I was just being patient, not running all my resources out into his Sunfalls. And, those are the kind of games you can really get punished for quickly. Like Frank was saying, where, okay, I ran out all my resources. I was playing really inefficiently. I wasn't optimizing my mana, and I get blown out by one Sunfall. It's GG. So like, you have to be pretty patient as well. But at the same time, if you make like 1 or 2 early mistakes, it pretty much means the match.
Yeah. So first deck on the list is Domain. And Domain is our 5-color list. It's playing cards like Topiary Stomper, Archangel of Wrath, Atraxa, only 3 creatures that are in the deck, followed by Herd Migration, Leyline Binding, and Sunfall. It is playing other cards, but like these are the cards that the game plan is centered around. You want to be optimizing your mana to early Leyline Binding because the format is very creature heavy, creature based.
Yeah.
So you want to have interaction early to then use your Topiary Stomper and the Invasion of Zendikar to like turbo yourself to 7 lands to either be tacking in with Vigilant 4/4s or play Atraxa, play an Archangel, but you're kicking it to like lifelink, blow up 2 dudes. And then it's playing a very heavy like board wipe suite with Sunfall and Depopulate to like stabilize you. And what I think may actually like the linchpin to this deck is Herd Migration, because if they don't have the land that they need, they can just discard Herd Migration, get a land. But the kicker is the gaining 3 life, because it can kind of like that 3 life can stop your opponents from like just being able to get there before you board wipe them.
Right.
And so like it hurts really bad against burn, hurts pretty bad against like my list on Esper midrange, where like I lost a game today and like lost by 2 life because of didn't get lethal by 2 life because of a Herd Migration. So I think that card really puts it over the top into getting you to, the late game where you have uncounterable Atraxas and Archangels because you're playing Cavernous Souls.
Yeah, the addition of Cavernous Souls, I was going to say, has been huge for the deck. I was wondering which like of the 3-4 color or 3-color decks or like the 5-color human / legends decks with Plaza of Heroes. I was wondering which of these decks was going to abuse Cavernous Souls the most, and it ended up being just Domain Ramp, which is kind of funny. But it kind of makes sense at the same time. They have so much mana already, and with all the triumphs, they kind of don't have a problem getting their mana as much as like the fact that the Archangel of Wrath is uncounterable with the kicker. It helps you get that black for the kicker as well, which is their least played color. And then Atrexa being uncounterable as well. Counterspell is already kind of bad in the format, besides like Make Disappear for like the tempo decks. But the fact that like now nothing, you know, even like the late game, oh, maybe I can use a big Syncope, or maybe I can, what's that, Bargain might Make Disappear, or is it Exploit? I can't remember. But you sack a guy for your Make Disappear for the 4 mana. Now it's not going to work anymore. Casualty. Yes. Casualty. I was like, it's not Bargain, but you know what I mean?
It's close. Yeah, it's close.
But yeah, so the Make Disappear is even on 4, it's not going to work against the Cavernous Souls, and now they're getting out their creature guaranteed, which is a lot scarier. I do like that the list that we have up here, the 10-0 list from the Standard Challenge a couple weeks ago had Nissa Ascended Animist in the list. I really like that card for the deck. Just another way to get some threats out, but also
as a one-off.
It is one of, but like it's your late game payoff, you know. It also hits artifacts and enchantments, and just the fact that it just can make guys is so nice, because the Herd Migration is obviously probably the strongest card in the deck, and the reason why the deck is so good. But it only makes 5/3/3s. They die to pretty much everything, and if they are playing Sunfalls against you, then your deck kind of feels bad when you're playing Domain, because their goal is to wipe the board, play big things. And if your deck's goal is also to wipe the board and play big things, then Domain is like, damn, well, I better hope that my plan is better, or I can do it faster because I have so much more mana than them. So that's just something I've noticed with the deck, that it doesn't have like Mirix or anything like that to kind of like go late against like the control decks, although the control decks are sort of just pushed out of the meta anyway by how powerful the mid-range tempo decks are right now.
Well, and Cavernous Souls making Counterspell even worse than it already was. Like, that was kind of the thing that you could do with some of the tempo plans, was like, oh, if I have like creature, and like you're about to stabilize and I counter the thing that you have to stabilize with, now the Counterspells in the tempo decks are just for the early ramp or for the Sunfall. Like, I don't really care if you're playing a Topiary Stomper that can attack or block if I'm getting the Sunfall and the Depopulate away to try and get lethal before you can stabilize.
Yeah, and you can't Cavernous Souls the Sunfall.
You cannot. But that's kind of the basic deck strategy. I know that was kind of fast. Again, if you have questions, hit us up in Discord. But that's like the main strategy, is to just ramp into like board wipes and then play Topiary Stompers, Archangels, and you know, those cards are pretty big, and most of the removal can't hit them unless you're playing Go for the Throat, which, as you'll see as we go on in the list, there's a lot of black running around. Yeah, black is very prevalent, and the cards are overlapping between decks, so you can tell like which cards are like really, really good.
Yeah, Standard right now is honestly, excuse me, there's no color that's too good. All the colors are pretty balanced, but there's like just a couple cards in each color that are like, that's the standout card, you know? And then from there, you look at these top 20 cards, you're like, okay, now I can start building whatever deck I want. Pick the colors from there, whatever. The archetype is what matters the most. But cards like Virtue of, what's the white one? Loyalty?
Yes.
Virtue of Loyalty, wedding Announcement, etc. are like, oh, wow, really good for white, you know? Atrexa is just Atrexa, whatever, but that's like a ramp payoff or a cascade payoff if they do that. Excuse me.
Yes, they do that.
And then there's like black. So black wants Deep Cavern Bat or Preacher of the Schism or Shieldred. And then green is like, well, if I'm going to play green, I can play Mosswood Dread Knight for the Golgari list, or Topiary Stomper for the ramp list, you know. So you just got to keep in mind that these key cards are going to matter the most, because these lists can look different when Karlov Manor comes out, or the second half of the RCQ season, and for, I guess I should say, the last third of it. Karlov Manor is going to come out in the beginning of February. It's going to be legal right away. So yeah, for half the RCQ season, you're going to have Karlov Manor running around. And if it's a big impact on the format, you're going to want to keep in mind, excuse me, sorry. You're going to want to really keep in mind what these staple cards are, because your decks might start changing and you just want to be aware of what the top contenders are if your deck changes or if you have to change as a result of other decks changing. So we don't know what it's going to be in Karlov Manor, but it's going to be legal for the 75K. And I'm constantly keeping that in my head. Like, I'm not committing to any deck yet. I don't know what the format's going to look like. There could be something that changes. I just want to try a little bit of everything, see what I like, see what I don't like, and then start leaning towards the things I like and moving myself away from the ones I don't like as I start to either narrow down my colors or narrow down the archetype I like the most to choose what I'm going to play.
Yeah. And that's something that at least be thinking about with our podcast, is that as more cards are getting released and we're getting like a week, 2 weeks before Karlov Manor, we'll start to give predictions, not only for the limited format of Karlov Manor, but also like, hey, this is how we think it's going to impact Standard, because we'll be thinking about it a lot, as it's going to affect the MTG Chicago, like Chicago Con, like the Magic Con. It's going to affect our Magic Con play a lot. So we are going to be keeping a very close eye on spoilers as they're releasing.
That's going to have a little MTG Chicago link here. Shout out to Sal. Every time Frank calls the Magic Con MTG Chicago.
We'll need a swear jar for me to like put, you know, a $1 in every time I cross those two over.
Anyways, that's still main ramp. The next deck is actually really cool.
Yeah, so this is a new deck. It's Rakdos midrange. But
wow, Rakdos midrange is good in a format.
Surprising. But what's really cool about this deck is this is kind of like making up for all those people that bought their geological appraisers and then like couldn't use them for Pioneer. This is pretty much geological appraiser deck.
Yeah, I mean, geological appraiser and the dinosaur for Discover 5.
Trumpeting Carnosaur.
Are
it's
like
a 6-drop though.
Yeah, but like these guys are like the main reason why this deck is so good. Geological Appraiser, you just want it to hit your Preacher of the Schism, and then you're always cooking. If you like top deck a Geological Appraiser on like empty board state, you guys are grinding out, you're both in top deck mode, it kind of feels like you're playing old school Jund. You're like, Geological Appraiser, hit my Preacher of the Schism. You know, like now you're in a really bad spot as the opponent where they're going to start drawing all these cards, and the deck plays Bloodtide Harvester, which if you play Pioneer, you know, and it plays Shieldred, so if you play Magic, you know. It also has Gix, so it has like another alternate form of card advantage besides Preacher of the Schism for the 3-drop slot. But then the fact that they can just like start playing all these extra spells against you is really scary. And they have the Deep Cavern Bat, so that bat is super scary. It's not like getting crude for Subterranean Schooner in this list, but that bat is going to be, you're going to start hating it pretty soon if you play against it.
Yeah, and that is like spoiler to the rest of the episode, but Deep Cavern Bat is a 4-of in pretty much every single deck that is touching black. It's a 4-of in Rakdos midrange. It's a 4-of in Esper midrange. 4-of in Dimir, and it's a 4-of in this Rakdos list.
Yeah, who would have thought the only thing that makes Brain Maggot good is giving it flying?
And lifelink.
The lifelink is nice, but the fact that it has evasion is so nasty.
No, it is so nasty, but what I think is making it even better, which I'm loving about the Dimir list, the Rakdos list, and it's also popped up in Esper midrange, is because of Gix and the ability to draw a card and lose a life, you are negating, like you gain the life and then immediately lose it to draw a card.
True.
So it makes Gix even better.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of lists are starting to play it as like, oh, it's not only a card draw engine, but on top of it being a card draw engine, I can just like draw, like not hit the downside of Gix because of Deep Cavern Bat, which is really awesome. Yeah,
that's partially why I like the Dimir list so much. So the Dimir deck, which is just another Black X midrange deck, not as high in the meta right now, but they play Subterranean Schooner and no Smuggler's Copter in the format, right? But the bat makes that card even better, and that card makes the bat even better, where like now the lifelink really, really matters because it's getting all those explore triggers. And if you end up just attacking with like a 4/4 bat as a result of crewing the Subterranean Schooner a couple turns, man, this like it starts looking really bad for you if you can't get rid of the schooner, or the schooner just gets the bat even just a couple counters, all of a sudden you have this like what was supposed to be just this innocuous brain maggot flyer that you kill when you want your card back. Now it's like an actual threat against you, and you want to kill it more so because of your life total as opposed to getting your card back. So I don't know. The card is really cool, and I love the synergies it has in the format, like Frank was saying.
Yeah. So this deck is very, very just resilient. Because if the board is wiped and you then play into a Trumpeting Carnosaur that then goes into a Geological Appraiser, which then goes into another card, you, for one card, have like 3 creatures on the board again. It can very quickly rebuild faster than any other deck.
Right.
And it's got really cool things, like cool interactions. I was playing this deck for a little bit where you decide, oh, I'm going to use Trumpeting Carnosaur's other effect, where I'm going to pay 3 mana and deal 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker, and then they're playing Cruelty of Gix. So then you can Cruelty of Gix and immediately bring Trumpeting Carnosaur back to the battlefield. And unlike Geological Appraiser, where you have to cast it to get the Discover ability, Trumpeting Carnosaur is an ETB. So even if you reanimate it from the graveyard, you're still getting the Discover effect. So
I think you mean like Charlotte's Agent, because you said Geological Appraiser?
Yeah.
Isn't Geological Appraiser also an ETB?
No, Geological Appraiser is only on cast. If you cast this card, you get the Discover.
Oh, apologies. Yeah. If you cast it, but it's still an ETB trigger. But yeah, you have to have cast it.
Yes, you have to have cast Geological Appraiser to get the Discover.
Yeah, I misunderstood. Yeah, you can just reanimate and still get the trigger. Right.
Yeah, you still get the Discover even if you reanimate the Trumpeting Carnosaur, which is like super, super cool.
Right.
And so
that Carnosaur is just so good. I really like the card a lot.
Yeah, it's removal. It's a really crazy body late game. You can reanimate it. It's a really cool card.
Yeah, I mean, I've been seeing some really interesting lists playing the Carnosaur specifically with like fight rigging. So when fight rigging, when Ixalan came out, they were like, "Oh, the blue black god instantly makes fight rigging good." But it's like, well, we already kind of had cards that do that. So there's the 3 mana 6/6 dinosaur. There's the Carnosaur that can hit that and then discover into fight rigging to instantly trigger it. I was playing against some really cool fight rigging decks online lately. I don't know if they're going to be legit, but keep an eye out for them because that dinosaur is legit. It can cascade into some pretty scary 5-drops. I mean, it could even just cascade into Shieldred against you, and now you just have these 2 huge threats, and you don't have a board wipe. If you don't have a spot removal or a board wipe in that moment, you could just have lost the game on the spot.
Yeah. So this list is good. The only thing that's like cool to know is that outside of Trumpeting Carnosaur, discovering into Shieldred or Geological Appraiser, or any of the other smaller creatures, they're also playing a one of the Bone Horde Dracosaur, which I found myself with Cruelty of Gix tutoring for a lot, because if you're facing another mid-range deck, the card is exiling 2 cards that you can play every turn that also makes bodies, that is a 5/5 first strike flying blocker. The card is insane. And so it's a great one-of that doesn't feel like a one-of because you are either discovering into it, or with Cruelty of Gix you can tutor for it.
Yeah.
So it's a cool one-of. You will see it, just expect it. And this list also runs Cavern of Souls that you can, make your Geological Appraisers uncounterable, or make your vampires uncounterable because there's a bunch of them, or just make the dinosaurs uncounterable. It's really only playing like outside of the bat, which you're probably not getting countered because it's a 2-drop. It's just humans. I mean, Shieldred is a Praetor, but you're probably not having Shield not be countered. You've got multiple overlaps with vampires. And
she's usually like one of the last cards you're casting anyway. You want her on an empty board state.
Right.
I think one last thing I would say to note is that these Black X mid-range decks, not just Rakdos, but all of them, are going to be playing heavy into like Extract the Truth and Duress and Liliana the Veil. So if you are also playing mid-range or Domain Ramp or Control still, because you're me and you don't want to give up on Control, Liliana the Veil crushes you. Duress crushes you, especially when they have all these threats on top of it. You can get punished if you are like the bat hits your Sunfall, the Duress hits whatever was going to answer the bat, and then all of a sudden they got all these threats on you, and then they're plussing a Liliana. You can't hit a field nuke fast enough. Carnosaur's coming in. it can get really scary really fast, even for like the domain ramp guys. So like a meta deck that's like getting duressed, they are pretty scared of that. And Extract the Truth can also make them sacrifice enchantments, which will hit the beans if they want to go after their card advantage, or the leyline bindings if they want to get their guys back. And now all of a sudden you're getting like a Carnosaur off of a leyline binding is going to discover 5 again, like what Frank was saying, and that's kind of scary. So I really should look out for those cards. And then I guess the last one is kind of quirky is Breach the Multiverse. It gets played mostly in Orzhov, but it is a cyber card in Rakdos currently, and it can kind of get there. And it has weird play implications if you let it resolve where you thought you were winning and all of a sudden you're not. So we'll get into the next deck though, which is Frank's pet deck right now, and so I'll let him cover it.
Yeah, so Esper midrange. And part of my reason for like playing Esper is like when I got out of the land of Sultai and my first time playing Standard, I was playing Esper like but control lists. And so I do think the domain deck is good. There are some times where you just draw poorly and it feels terrible. Whereas Esper like is a very consistent deck and can really grind a lot. And it's also for me being like I'm coming back to Esper, which was like part of what I was playing in my early days of Magic.
I mean, Esper is really good, but since Frank mentioned Sultai, I did promise a shout out to our boy Julian, who is still playing the Sultai self mill and making Jace look actually fun, because in Control it's kind of boring now, but milling yourself with the Jace, kind of cool.
Yeah. There was a list. There was a list that won like a store championship that like he played.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's kind of how he got this list. It was like it's like that one vermin from I forget which like mills you to, and Stalactite Stalker, which like every time you descend is getting
from Down Area United.
Yeah, so
Cruel Somnophage, which we really liked from the spoilers for Malls of Eldraine. It's just a cool deck.
Yeah, it looks sweet. But so Esper midrange, the deck is similar playing, I keep saying Thoughtseize Bat. It is Deep Cavern Bat, but it's doing the same thing. And if you don't know what Deep Cavern Bat does, not all of you are playing these decks. When it ETBs, you can take a non-land permanent. So unlike
is it permanent or card? I thought it was just a non-land card.
Non-land card. Sorry, non-land card. Because I'm thinking
it's just a straight up Thoughtseize, but for 2 mana.
It's a better Kitesail Freebooter, because Kitesail Freebooter had limitations, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it was non-creature. It's just like an actual brain maggot. Like what Deep Cavern Bat does has already existed, but this guy has flying and lifelink, which is what makes it really quirky. But in this format specifically, it's just like kind of like never been better, to have a brain maggot, where in the past it's just a bad card. They can just kill the bat and get their card back. It's kind of like a pseudo O-ring effect. But the way it plays in this format, the tempo, the fact that you're like healing their guy, and then you're going to either crew a Subterranean Schooner or use it to gain life back that Gix is losing you, etc. Like all these like one-off interactions, or just like that 1 damage in the air for 4 turns, if you don't enter the bat, now you're a 50-year life total is chunked by a guy that took your best card.
Yeah, and like what this deck does that you were talking about, like what Schooner in the Dimir version is that has Rafine to play on 3,
right?
Where like you are then immediately swinging in with the bat, you're conniving, and then having the ability to put a counter on it with Rafine, and then dig towards cards that you need in the matchup. Because just like any matchup, you have cards in your deck that are good for most of the field, but like if you're playing against Domain, cut down feels terrible. So like you're pitching your cut downs with Rafine's connive ability and digging towards what you need.
Discarding spells is better for connive because you get those counters. So now the bat is even scarier. So like you're gonna notice every black deck we talk about is using the bat in such a way that it's not just I took a card from you, but it's also plus, and that just adds up so much to the point where that card is like honestly the MVP of the format currently. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And to the testament, like Esper is kind of just a black mid-range deck. It's just Black Azorius, and the blue-white you could almost consider a splash. I mean, it's a pretty heavy splash, but they are playing similar play styles. It's just instead of playing something like Extract the Truth, it's make disappear, stop you from field nuking me, make sure my guys stay in play, draw and discard a bunch of cards. There's my card advantage to like find the things I need against you.
Yeah. The only thing that's like kind of important to know is that this deck in a constant state of flux as to like what style they're playing. Because there is one deck that like feels to me like it hedges towards burn, where it's playing Denick, which is
like the 4X Denick thing.
Yeah, it's playing Denick, it's playing Wedding Announcement, it's playing Virtue of Loyalty.
Yeah.
Which to me, I'm not on this version. I don't like it. The deck I'm most scared of is Domain. I feel like I can grind with the rest of the decks, but Virtue of Loyalty and Wedding Announcement just feel too slow. Like turn 3, make a 1/1. I didn't really like it.
Yeah.
The other version of the deck is moving up to being more like still a mid-range deck, but it feels like similar to Soldiers in the sense that it's playing a lot more flash creatures. Or it is playing, I mean, like both decks. Both decks play 4 of Deep Cavern Bat, 4 of Rafine, and then one side is on Wedding Announcement, Virtual Loyalty. The other side is playing like some Shieldreds. It's playing Urtai, which you're using to either counter spells or abilities.
Or even just killing a guy.
Yeah, or killing a guy, making them draw a card. They lose more life because you have Shieldred out, or you're drawing an extra card because this list is also playing Fairy Mastermind as like a 3 of, where if they're drawing extra cards off of Beans or drawing extra cards off of, it's a mirror matchup, you're drawing extra cards too to help like keep up on answers. This is the list that you have it pulled up that I like most, and it's moving as a very recent, it's putting Gix in as an additional draw engine.
I mean, they were playing it before, and then they were just like cut, but like that meta was different,
right? And now it's playing Gix as like an additional Rafine, which is really nice, and it also works really well with Shieldred. And Lauren of the Third Path is like a 1 of to really just.
I love Lauren.
Yeah, it does the same thing. Good. Like if you have a Shieldred out and you have Lauren, you're making them draw cards. They're losing life, or you're getting to like blow up a Leyline Binding. Or if you're playing against Soldiers, you're blowing up a Wedding Announcement. It's really, really good.
It combos really nicely with Fairy Mastermind too. With that card draw, you're like, well, draw an extra card, and then I'm gonna get 2.
Yeah. So it's a good 1 of. This is the list that I lean, and 3 Subterranean Schooners. That's an important thing.
Yeah.
The Subterranean Schooner is in both lists. It's just like, is it a 2 of? Is it a 3 of? I'm playing it as a 3 of in the list that's not playing Virtue of Loyalty and Wedding Announcement. Those lists are playing 2 of them.
Yeah.
I like the card specifically because if you keep that on the field and they go to depopulate or they go to Sunfall, you won't lose your Schooner. So then you can immediately play another creature to then start attacking it again.
Right. And I was going to bring up since we're going to talk about Dimir later anyway, I'm just going to pull it up now. The cool thing about the Esper deck is that the white splash is minuscule. It's like a couple cards in the main, a couple cards on the side. Otherwise, it's literally just a Dimir mid-range deck. Like Frank was saying, it also has Subterranean Schooner. It's also abusing the bat, but then you have Rafine. If you're playing these decks, Esper is definitely better than Dimir. Dimir is cool. Just the Esper deck has that white splash that's honestly super worth it. And it's a testament to why it's just been better in the meta. Esper has been good for like a year straight. But if you look at like just the Dimir deck, they have to play like Archon of the Drost, Cartsail Arsonist, Malcolm, which is really cool. Malcolm's a cool card, and these other cards are powerful, but it just doesn't feel as good as what the white deck is doing with Rafine and Rafine comboing with the bat, the Subterranean Schooner, the fact that you get to play Destroy Evil, which is really nice. I've even seen some lists playing the Get Lost, because Get Lost is just like a catch-all right now, really strong. But if you're playing just the Dimir version, then you can play like Spyglass, Siren, and Malcolm, which are nice. And then they also work pretty well with Gix. That is a 4 of in the Dimir only version, where Gix is like a 2 of, I believe, in like the Esper deck, because you want it, but having 4 of a legend kind of feels bad. So I like the Dimir version, but it feels like something I'd only kind of play around with on Arena. But if I was going to go to like the 75k that we're prepping for, I think Esper is definitely more of the way to go, unless something crazy happens and Karlov Manor, like we talked about, that pushes either Dimir higher or better white splashes for your Esper deck. that's currently where I am at with these two decks, at least.
Yeah, and my difference between my deck versus what people are playing is that I'm higher on Get Lost than Go for the Throat because it hits enchantments. I don't find the map tokens are useful, or like I'm worried about giving them that upside of map tokens unless I'm playing Burn. Burn's the only deck where I'm like, yeah, you drawing more lands is like kind of good for you so that you can get closer to gas.
Yeah.
If you have nothing to do with your mana, it gives them something to do with their mana.
Yeah,
But-
and their deck is so low on mana cost, though. Like, I kind of get what you're saying, where I agree that if I give somebody maps, and most decks in the format right now, if they start having to use the maps, I'm like, well, then that means nothing better was in your hand, and I want to be in that spot. You know,
Right.
if you're popping the maps, then, I mean, if you pop a map or two, that's a lot of mana to invest just to like skip your fourth or fifth turn. So I don't know. I definitely agree. Get Lost is definitely worth playing. To Frank's point, the deck that he's playing, it just got second place at the in the standard challenge yesterday. So it is very good, and the version he's playing is what people seem to be leaning towards. But he's playing Get Lost over Go for the Throat, which I can get behind. Go for the Throat can be scary if you need to answer a subterranean schooner, you know?
Yeah, and Preacher of the Schism is like the new card that is both popped up in the Rakdos list and in the Esper list. And Preacher of the Schism is replacing Lord Skitter.
Lord
Skitter was like the one flex slot that Esper had because it was making a dude every turn and exiling from the graveyard. The graveyard doesn't matter like too much at this moment, except for in the Cascade deck, which is like way down the list.
Yeah.
But the ability for it to be a 2/4, which blocks really well into most things, and on top of it, like you could either be drawing cards or making a 1/1 with lifelink, is so good because you don't really want Lord Skitter against Burn.
Right.
But you're fine to be like, I'll swing in with my 2/4, and now I have a 1/1 lifelinker on top of the life gain that I have in other parts of the deck. Just feels like Preacher of the Schism is going to be the new like way, and like Lord Skitter is going to take a back seat, in my opinion.
Yeah, Lord Skitter, unless it actually synergizes in your deck, is no longer just like let's just play this. I mean, there was a reason why they didn't just put it in Pioneer right away. It has to kind of have some synergy, or the graveyard hate has to really matter. And honestly, there's just so much good graveyard hate incidentally as is that you don't really need it unless you're going out of your way to find it for some specific synergy.
The last thing I'll say about Esper midrange is that this is not an easy deck to play. I think that it is in between a midrange deck and a tempo deck. Yeah. It's like, right, there's Rakdos midrange and then there's Azorius Soldiers, and if like you put those two decks together, you get Esper midrange. And so you have like what you're conniving away really matters, and the order in which you play your lands really matters. And so I think that even though the deck is very powerful and has very powerful cards, it's not for the faint of heart. It will take a lot of practice of any other deck. Like Rakdos midrange is kind of like, I'm killing your stuff, I'm not cascading, but discovering into other things. It's very like straightforward. Yeah. Whereas Esper midrange, it's not.
Right. I definitely agree with that assessment of it for sure. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I chose not to play it myself, because it's so difficult to play, and I don't want to invest a lot of time into it when I don't personally vibe with the play style. That if I put a lot of resources into getting good at the deck, and then all of a sudden it's not good anymore because of Karlov Manor, I'm going to kind of feel some type of way.
Yeah.
The next deck is Mono Red Aggro. So it's kind of back. Mono Red has been pushing out the Boros deck, at least currently, which is kind of interesting because it really went down when the Boros list kind of came out. And now it's just back with a vengeance. It just got 7th place a couple weeks ago at one of the standard challenges, 5 and 3 on the deck list. But it's pretty much the same Mono Red that everybody was playing before Caverns of Ixalan. I don't think there's any new cards that they play. Yeah, just straight up same list, but they got my favorite card in there. So the notable cards that you need to worry about: Godric, Kumano faces Kakazan. The Bloodthirsty Adversary is pretty scary. Charming Scoundrel, just super good. And the fact that they have Squee that they can play out of the graveyard, that card is just phenomenal and really good at giving the celebration triggers. And they have Monastery Swiss Spear in the deck, so it's just a good deck. One of my favorite cards that they have out of the sideboard sometimes is like the Act of Treason that gives a wicked roll. So that card is really cool if you end up playing against it. They also have Brass Forge out of the sideboard, which can get really scary. Even against like Domain, you just gotta keep putting counters on this card, and if they don't answer it, you just kind of blow them out. And Get Lost doesn't hit artifacts, so that card can get really scary. Most people have cut away from the Nahiri's Warcrafting, it seems, to play Witchstalker Frenzy, which is nice. I kind of still like the Nahiri's Warcrafting, but it can be rough to play the 3-drop sometimes when you're like stuck on 2 lands. The Witchstalker Frenzy gets cheaper every time you have an attacker, so it's a 4-drop instant that says deal 5 damage to a creature, but it costs 1 less for each attacking creature you have. So before blocks, you're like swing in with 3 guys, 1 mana, blow up any creature on the battlefield, from what I remember. And it hits Shieldred, which is really important. The important thing about this Witchstalker Frenzy replacing the Nahiri's Warcrafting is that it has to kill Shieldred. They have to have a way to deal with Shieldred in this deck, or they kind of just like lose to the life gain. Where like Herd Migration, gaining them life isn't as scary for mono red. Shieldred landing, staying, that's really scary for them.
Yeah, and this deck is not often like getting tempoed out, and so you're not usually needing to use Witchstalker Frenzy defensively. Right. But like the card reads, it costs 1 less for each creature that attacked this turn. And so if like your opponent is attacking with 3 creatures,
that's true, yes,
it does cost 3 less that way too. And so like
if
you need to use it defensively, like you have that modality, right, which I think also is like a plus side for Witchstalker Frenzy.
Yeah, I think it's nice actually that now that Frank mentions that, when I was playing mono red, when the deck first came out online, I was just using it to grind, like get up to diamond or mythic fast, and then start playing the decks I actually want to play. And I do recommend that if you guys have the cards, just play mono red, grind it up until you get to like platinum or diamond, and then start playing the decks you actually want to test, because testing in low elo, it doesn't really make any sense. It's going to take you way longer, and you're going to play against fringe decks that don't matter way more often. And mono red, the games are just so fast. So when I was playing this deck, the Witchstalker Frenzy defensively, that comes up a lot. Like you'd be surprised how many of these mid-range decks start trying to pressure you back, because that's usually a good game plan for them, is to like, well, if I can kill this guy faster, or at least start in his life total, then I'm drawing more cards than him. Typically a mid-range player is going to be drawing a lot more cards than the red player. So if you can Witchstalker Frenzy on defense, now you're just being really mana efficient, and that can just add up over time. And sometimes you just have to have it like that. So like if they make a weird turn where you have 2 mana up, and they're like, oh, attack you with a Mosswood Dread Knight and like a Deep Cavern Bat, and they have a Shieldred in play, you're like, thanks, kill the Shieldred, you know? So those kind of plays will come up, and they definitely matter.
Yeah. Other than that, this deck is kind of like pretty much on wheels. Like it's pretty easy to play. It is hard to master. I think that aggro, as we've kind of said before, is like the deck that you give people to like learn the game.
Right.
But then once you get to like, okay, formats like this, where like it can be grindy, and like you've got decks that have so much life gain because Deep Cavern Bat is everywhere, the way in which you mulligan and the way in which you order things is like very complicated. Because if you don't play, like Burn is a deck that if you don't play it optimally, you can get really, really punished. Like sometimes you can get lucky and just like, oh, drew the spells that I needed and you can't beat me.
Right.
And you have other games where it's like, oh, because I didn't play absolutely optimally, I'm very punished for it. So I will say, like, if you're gonna play Burn, please get your reps in, because it's not a deck that definitely like you can just pick up and be like, oh man, I went 10-0 on this challenge. Not gonna happen.
It has the advantage of letting you play a lot because of how fast the deck is. Just, you know, when you're play testing, feel free to just scoop. Unless you actually think you have outs, just scoop. Get in as many reps as possible, because it's easy to get to the 90-95% skill level of Burn. Getting that extra 4 or 5% is what really makes a difference of the guys that win with the red deck and the guys that take red deck wins and make it red deck loses.
Yeah, and this is something that like is really important for, like, we did talk to you about, hey, if you are playtesting, you can playtest a lot on Arena, because it's one of the formats that like is really great, that Arena is really great for. But
Standard is great for arena.
Yeah, my best recommendation is that if you're like just looking to get some quick games, you don't have a lot of time, best of one is great. But if you're looking to like play test for an RCQ or for a large tournament, move away. Like I know that like moving up in ranks is appealing. It's very appealing for me, but sideboarding is super important, and it's super important for tournament play because games 2 and 3 are only played with your sideboard.
Yeah, so, best of ones are for when you're taking a potty break at work, and best of threes are for people that want to play Magic.
Yeah. So that like, please don't just jam best of ones. If you're going to RCQ season, play your best of threes because you got to learn to sideboard.
Absolutely. Sideboarding is pivotal.
And there's not a lot of guides out there. Like I am one that like is not only making Magic content, but likes to take in a lot of Magic content. And I've been looking at like sideboard guides to like try to improve my standard play. And outside of like YouTube videos and like watching someone play through a bunch, there aren't a lot out there anymore. Yep. Like TCG Player, Channel Fireball, the places that were making a lot of guides have really like dialed back. And so it's pretty much like, oh, I'm part of Sam Black's Patreon or like whoever is playing Magic that will help you get those. And so there's not a lot of like cheap or free or accessible content out there as it used to be specifically for this format.
Yep. And if you guys need help making sideboard guides, we do that. So our Patreons who have already been supporting us, they can attest to the fact that anytime they want a sideboard guide for a tournament, they can just jump onto Discord and be like, this is my list. This is what I'm playing. Help me out. And I will literally help them make a sideboard guide on the spot. If they already have a sideboard that they are locked in, that's even easier. But I can even help you make some like last minute decisions, or Frank can. Whenever we go to our own tournaments, Frank and I will sit down and literally do a write-up sideboard guide and print it out and put it in our deck box, because even if you are good and you are experienced, it's still worth it to just like not have to waste the RAM on like sideboarding and just like, you know, be able to relax and not have to like worry like, oh, I know what I'm playing against. And then, oh, maybe I'll make one last minute adjustment because this guy's playing a card I didn't expect.
Yeah, it's a lot of Magic when you're going to even an RCQ, because you're planning to try and go on to an RC. You have 4, if it's a small turnout, 5 rounds, if it's a normal turnout of Swiss. So that's 5 hours.
Yeah, and some RCQs get pretty big. Like we get over 32 guys here sometimes, and that's 6 rounds of Swiss. And that doesn't include top 8. That doesn't include your driving time. That doesn't include the fact that if you're not playing burn, you don't get to eat. So keep that in mind too. Like pack a lunch, bring some granola bars. But because you're playing so much Magic, the sideboard guide is positive EV always.
Yeah, it's positive because it's less mental energy on like having to think, wait, what am I supposed to put in against this matchup? You can just focus all of your mental on trying to play your games optimally, because you have games where I did tonight where you're not getting as many lands as you had planned on, and you're stuck on land drops. So, okay, my decisions aren't as easy because I'm having to play around like what's happening in the moment. Right. And that stuff will happen because Magic is a game of
variance.
That's the word. Thank you. Yeah, I think we hammered on that. Let's get on to Azorius Soldiers. This is what I would describe similar to Esper in the sense that it's a tempo deck. And it's Azorius Soldiers, because a lot of the cards in the deck aren't actually soldiers, but
not anymore, at least. Yeah,
not anymore, but there are soldier payoffs. So Lunarch Veteran, Zephyr Sentinel, Knight Errant of Eos. It's also got some removal like Werefox Bodyguard, which is like helping you with tempo. Same is true for like Make Disappear, where like you're playing a lot of creatures, you're trying to aggro them out, but using some of those tempo pieces to keep your opponents from interacting with you. And so if they do have a blocker, you flash in your Werefox Bodyguard so that you can try and get in enough damage to get the game to end. And then it has a couple pieces like Wedding Announcement and it's just Wedding Announcement to help you grind if you do need to go later.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is this Azorius Soldiers deck, because of the fact that it has so much flash, there's so many different like interactions and play patterns you can do to try to outplay your opponents that are playing these field nukes and stuff. So like, for example, I had a playtest game where My opponent went to Leyline Binding one of my creatures, so I Werewolf Bodyguard and actually used it as a bodyguard to exile my own guy, because when the bodyguard leaves, I get my guy back. And then he went to later on do a field nuke, and I was like, cool, I'm going to sacrifice my bodyguard for the life and then put the card back in my hand. And then I flashed in the card later, which ended up being a Zephyr Sentinel to bounce another creature because it was preferable to keep that creature instead. And so like Zephyr Sentinel, Tishana's Tidebinder, Werewolf Bodyguard, there's just so many different weird loops you can do with these cards, and which ones you keep in play and why. And the fact that some have flying and some don't, like it's going to be situational which ones you prefer. But I do really like this deck. I prefer it to the Esper deck only because Knight Errant of Eros is just such a house. But I prefer kind of playing this flash play style where I can go turn one recruitment officer, and if I draw a lot of lands, I'm not feeling too bad if I have this recruitment officer in play to just start investing mana into it. And then the fact that every turn it's like hold or make disappear or flash in a guy. And Tishana's Tidebinder is kind of a house. Like we talked about the Cavern Bat being like the black all-star. The blue all-star is Tishana's Tidebinder. It is really, really good. Turning off these planeswalkers really matters. Just hitting random triggers will add up. She can just turn off Shieldred, turns off Leyline Binding. I mean, it can even just stop the Atrexa trigger. Now they just have a 7/7.
No lifelink, which matters.
No lifelink,
no
flying. It's crazy. So Tishana's Tidebinder, really kind of a awesome card. I'm so glad that card exists now.
Yeah, and it's a new addition to the deck. The deck wasn't playing it before. It is playing it now.
I mean, she's one of the reasons why it's soldiers.
Yeah. Well, also Lunarch Veteran, which is really great. It's also it's great for not just the burn matchup, but for these other matchups that are mid-range where you're grinding, is because every time you play a creature, you're gaining life.
Yeah, and the flashback is really nice on it too. I would disturb rather, but getting your guy back out of the graveyard and it's got 2 power all of a sudden, like that just adds up, and it taps really well into the Knight Errant of Eos. It's just so good.
Yeah, it's a great card, and the deck is good because it's just got a lot of tools. But again, it's similar to Esper mid-range in the sense that like, because there are so many different lines that you can make, playing the deck optimally is really hard if you're not putting in a lot of work.
Right, this is a deck you definitely have to practice, but similarly to Burn, these games usually end faster because of the nature of your deck. Some games will be super heavy grinds, and it happens, but a lot of games you can just sneak away with, and that'll let you get more playtesting in. So keep that in mind whenever you're choosing your deck.
Yeah. And that's really like the big 5 that we had. We did talk about Dimir a little bit. I don't think we need to cover that anymore.
We don't have to cover any of the rest of the decks in the format. Just keep in mind that there are other decks that you can play Dimir mid-range, Orzhov mid-range. We talked about how Black X is just good. There are Azorius aggro decks. There is even a Bant Poison list that they really want the standard challenge. There is like Selesnya enchantments you could be scared of. Boros aggro is still running around with that version of the deck. There is still technically Cascade, but it's kind of just like a meme deck at this point. I mean, once you get past like top 13 or 14, realistically, I don't think you matter, but you should be aware of the deck's existence. Don't show up to like the RC or the RCQ and you're like, wow, I don't know what that card is. Like, then you weren't prepared enough. You know what I mean?
The only other deck that like is like prevalent that we didn't talk about is like similar to Dimir's Golgari, which is playing like Mosswood Dread Knight. Don't sleep on this card.
Yeah.
The card just provides so much of an engine with you being able to like, oh, I can lose life and draw a card. Yeah. Plus I also have a body, and when it dies, I get to do it again. It's really great. And Blossoming Tortoise, just it feels like old Rakdos mid-range in like Pioneer, where you're like, deck. Yeah, where you're playing, oh, I've got creatures, they get blown up, that's okay. I've got these man lands that are really good that are attacking it.
Yeah, the Rock deck definitely feels really scary, but one of the cards I think is like a hidden MVP. Whenever I play against Golgari, I'm so scared of the Tranquil Frill Black because they can just like pay green and get all these modes on you, and like destroying enchantments right now really matters, which is why I'm personally so high on Get Lost. So like, yeah, Golgari midrange is definitely a sleeper clutch deck.
Glissa also destroys enchantments too.
Glissa is nasty, but she's a baddie for sure. The last deck I wanted to talk about because it got second place in the challenge this weekend, and I think it's a hidden deck that might actually start popping up more in this next coming month, is Esper Tempo. We did post a list in the Discord that's a more updated version of the deck. But it's kind of a funny story. I saw on Twitter the guy that played the deck posted that his friend got second place with the deck, and it was actually a worse version of what they recommended playing, but he couldn't get all the cards on Moto somehow for some reason. Probably not using mana traders or whatever, but it is what it is. He played an inferior version, quote unquote, of the deck and still got second place. But this is actually a Monastery Mentor deck, which is for me kind of super hype. But I'm actually kind of surprised that something like this wasn't popping up sooner. I know my buddy Gabe and I, we were actually trying to play Monastery Mentor or something along the lines of Prowess, Spells Matter for a while, and we just couldn't make it work. Granted, we were playing some quirky cards that we thought were fun, but not necessarily good. At the same time, Helping Hand, I mean, we just have Unearth in Standard. Not as good as Unearth, but still effectively Unearth. I mean, reanimating your Monastery Mentor with the Helping Hand, you still have all this mana to use to play like Considers or Cut Downs, Duresses, whatever you want to play. Halo Forger also letting you like Snapcast or major spells out of the graveyard, and then Haughty Djinn to just have another 3 mana huge threat later on. This kind of deck is kind of scary, and it also plays one of our hidden MVPs from Pioneer, the Picklock Prankster.
Card is so good.
I think this deck is actually legit. I would be worried about this deck. I think in the next month, I wouldn't be surprised if this deck broke into top 5. But this is like pretty hot, pretty cool. Check the deck list out. It's on Goldfish. It's on MTG decks. And it's in the Discord if you want to just join the Discord and see the deck list. I'm going to be trying out a lot of this and seeing if I like it, because I'm a big fan of Monastery Mentor, and I kind of miss playing that card. It was super good back in the day. It used to be a vintage all-star, so like card is awesome, and the play pattern of Monastery Mentor is pretty rewarding if you can get the payoff going. So that's like the last thing I would bring up for Standard.
Yeah,
at least at the moment.
The last thing that I have on our list before we wrap up, I know this is a longer episode. We're approaching the hour-and-a-half mark, but I put notable cards that are across multiple decks for the sake of, I think that as Standard is getting played more, these decks are gonna, or like these cards are gonna start to cost more. And if you're like, I don't really know what deck I want to play, these are some staples that you can go ahead and pick up now that like are across so many decks that I think that like are good cards to pick up if you're just like, I don't know what to do, I'm kind of between decks. Well, these cards are pretty safe for a lot of what's happening. And so that is Preacher of the Schism. It's played in red black, blue black, and green black.
And mono black.
Deep Cavern Bat is played across all of those decks as well, plus Esper Midrange. So if you're considering any of those, that's a great card to pick up too. Wedding Announcement is played in Azaria Soldiers, and it's played in some versions of Esper Midrange, though I do think that is getting pushed out.
It's just such a good card. Like Frank is saying, these cards that he's mentioning are just good cards. You're going to want them.
Yeah. They're already super expensive, but Shieldred is played.
Yeah, Shieldred is like $75, $80 now, and she was down to like 50 or 60. So like she's going up again, but like she is just good. And I wouldn't feel too bad buying them if you need them to play, just because she's always going to be good in Pioneer, like pretty much for like ever. She's still really good in Legacy, which is crazy, but there's mono black coffers in Legacy, and you can play her in Modern if you really want to. So not a bad pickup. It just sucks if you missed the window of getting her like at $50 or whatever. Maybe if you're lucky, you can find some guy selling a play set for a decent price or get it in a trade. But yeah, if you missed your boat on Shieldred and you don't want to play her, it might be too late. I don't think she's going to go down anytime soon. I think $70, $80 is going to be normal for her at this point, which is, I mean, let's be real. She's good in all formats. Even the Commander players love her. So you can't hate on the price tag, I think, with this one. The other one, though, is Tashana's Tidebinder. Every blue deck plays it. It's a staple in Modern, so that's already like a sweet pickup. If a card is playable in Modern, it's always going to have some kind of value. And it's only like $10 right now. Like you can get a playset of Tashana's for like $35, $40. I think that's a steal.
Yeah, and Tashana's Tidebinder is like not necessarily. There are some lists for Esper Midrange that are playing it in the main board. The Dimir deck is playing it in the main board, but pretty much all blue decks are playing it as a sideboard card. And so that is like reason enough to get it, is because almost every deck that is touching blue will have it in the sideboard, plus Azori Soldiers, I don't know if I said this already, is mainboarding it now.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Modern Rhinos is mainboarding 4, and they're not deviating. So like, just that alone should tell you how strong the card is. It's only it's new in Standard, so it's gonna be around for 3 years in Standard. You're gonna want this card.
That's all that we have for our show. Hope that is at least not all that you'll need to know for Standard RCQ season, but this is a primer to like get you ready and feel like, okay, I know how to at least go into testing to get ready for some events, because Standard RCQs are starting this weekend. So please go ahead and lost my train of thought. So sorry.
Well, we're going to be practicing a lot of Standards, so join us in the Discord. We're not just going to be talking about Standard today. We're definitely going to bring more episodes in the future for Standard, because this whole season for the next 3 months will be Standard. We'll let you know what we're doing, how our events go, and what our testing looks like, to update you guys on what the format looks like and as it changes, especially for Karlov Manor coming in February. But as far as like testing goes, yeah, hit us up on Discord. Let's get some games going. I really want to grow our testing community, because we want to do well at the MagicCon.
Yeah, and that's Stan's such a great co-host, because that's exactly where I was going, is just stay in communication with us for what's going on, because we're going to be talking about this a lot and we are going to be playing it a lot. And so I think that we're going to have some good insight moving forward on what changes are going to happen in the meta with, just prep for MagicCon Chicago.
With that being said, shout outs to MTG Chicago, our boy Sal, always helping us out. He does our thumbnails on YouTube, by the way. And we record a ton of gameplay for him in the shop for his channel, MTG Chicago. And if you haven't already, give him a subscribe on YouTube. Check out the gameplay. And if you are local to us, come to Boar's Hat Gaming. Shout outs to us here at Boar's Hat Gaming. Play in the store. I'll get you on camera. If you're playing a cool deck, or if you're playing something meta that hasn't been on camera in a while, I'll get you on camera. We want to see a lot of cool, interesting decks, but also like a diversity of the format, especially in Modern with how many decks there are. But we play Pioneer, we play Modern, Standard, everything here. So shout out to Boar's Hat Gaming. If you're not from the area, check out our website. We can definitely find you the products you need. We have really fair prices, and we usually have pretty much all the singles, assuming a deck didn't come out that makes everybody just blow out our inventory for like the month. Shout outs to Nancy Steroids for our intro and outro music, as well as the music that we use when we stream on Twitch. And what's it called? Shout outs to our artists working on the playmat. She'll be done with that soon, hopefully. And then shout outs to Todd for always helping us out with the tech stuff, hanging out with us on the corner over there, making sure that our audio sounds clean.
And the visuals.
And the visuals. He's got these graphics coming up, which is really nice. Having the cards on screen for you guys, I hope has been a boon. And for those that listen on Spotify, I really appreciate you guys. And we'll try to remember to start reading off some of the names of cards if they are new or quirky enough that you need to hear what a card does. But I always recommend just pulling it up on your phone if you're able to.
The video's on there too. For Spotify.
That is true, but some people like to drive, and you shouldn't watch the video while you're driving.
Don't do it. Don't be like me.
Anybody else?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for tuning into our show. And shout out to
appreciate you guys watching.
Yes, appreciate you guys watching. He did mention Boar's Hat Gaming with those play boosters. Make a purchase here. How about your local store?
True. Also, the giveaway. Don't forget on Twitter.
Yes, don't forget the giveaway. And we'll be doing more giveaways in the future. And so the next one will probably be for YouTube already. So be on the lookout. Thanks so much for listening to Tales from the Tap. And we'll see you again soon for more Standard content.
Have a good one.